Everyone, the title's down there. It basically says, why does TNA try to recreate the end of the nWo? Keep trying to recreate the nWo? I ask you that, folks. Why do you think they continue to try to recreate them? I mean, we can go as far back, if you will, to almost the beginning of TNA, 10 years ago, when they brought in Sports Entertainment Extreme, S.E.X. They had their own t-shirts and all that. Now, some people might say, well, it was more like the New Blood than nWo. True, but here's the thing. They kind of had actions like the nWo, but okay, that can be debated. And maybe it was there to help put TNA on the map. Because here you had Sports Entertainment Extreme, a group of young talents, or veterans, or whatever you want to call them. Even veterans, because you had the Rock and Roll Express as part of that group. You have this group of individuals who are like, look, we understand the NWA is all this, but the NWA needs to realize if you're going to succeed with this company, you need to move forward. You need to be about sports entertainment and not just rely solely on wrestling. Or whatever it was. So yeah, you could probably consider that being like a TNA version of the New Blood, but you can also kind of look at it as being sort of like the nWo. They wanted to change things. They were anti-establishment, if you will. But then fast forward years later, and we kind of get a rebranding of the group with the Kings of Wrestling, Jarrett, Hall, and Nash. Didn't last long. Then, fast forward again, and you get I don't know. You get the main event Mafia, I believe. Or actually, you get Planet Jarrett is what you get. You get that group, and then after that, you pretty much get the main event Mafia. Then, after the Mafia, or during the Mafia time, you get the World Elite, and they kind of combine. Alright, there you go. And if you think about it, World Elite was kind of like nWo Team B, if you will, black and white. Well, Mafia was like, the Elite. And the one thing I will say about the Mafia that made them unique, even though they were very nWo-like at times, with their attitude, was that they were only for champions only, former world champions. So that aside, and then you look at Planet Jarrett, and they were all basically about one guy. So that was kind of nWo-like. But then you take a look at, as I said, Planet Jarrett, Main Event Mafia, World Elite. And then, what else do we get? Oh, that's right. We get the band. That's right. We get Hall, Nash, and Six-Pac, or Sean Waltman, back together in TNA as the band, which was basically a continuation of some sorts of the nWo. And then, what else do we get? After that, we get Immortal, which was essentially, when you listen to the music, same music Hogan uses now, was nothing more than a TNA version, probably the most blatant TNA version of the nWo. Yeah, they didn't have colors and all that, but still, it was the music and everything essentially said Immortal, different name, but was the same group. And here's the thing, what killed Immortal, basically, and made them very nWo-like, is because every person they had as the TNA champion in the group, they had to try to protect. And it didn't matter who it was. If it was Hardy, Anderson, or Angle. Then, fast forward to now, and you have Aces and Eights, which is basically one of the most weakest groups even though you try to make them seem as badass as possible. But one of the most weakest groups ever, and probably one of the most weakest attempts at recreating the nWo, or an nWo-like stable. So again, I ask that question. Why are they doing this? Why would they want to recreate something that, let's be quite honest, you cannot recreate? The nWo was a once-in-a-lifetime thing that can never be duplicated, no matter how hard you try. I mean, WWE tried it with the Nexus in some ways, did not work. Get what I'm saying? They tried it with the Nexus, that did not work. They tried to recreate it from the original 3 and then expand on it after Hogan left. Did not work. The thing is, no matter how it's done, you cannot recreate something that was a once-in-a-lifetime group. A once-in-a-lifetime, a once-in-an-era group. You can't recreate that. It's like trying to recreate the Four Horsemen. You cannot do that. I mean, the TNA again tried to recreate the Horsemen with Fortune. That did not succeed. All you did was this, or whatever it was, and it did not succeed. People knew it was nothing more than TNA's attempt at cashing in on something that cannot be duplicated, cannot be recreated. And the only reason WCW ever succeeded with all its incarnations of the Horsemen, starting from the originals up to the times where you had Mongo, you had Benoit, you had Malenko. The reason those succeeded is because you still had Flair as the centerpiece, and you still had them living the styles and everything of the Horsemen. You had Flair and Anderson, and basically you had Flair as the centerpiece. You had Anderson there as a bit of an enforcer, and it basically and nothing really changed much. All you did was bring in new members. Nothing really changed. It was the same concept. It wasn't being recreated. It was being built upon. It was being expanded. It was being built upon. It was being built to continue on for generations and generations. I mean, when they put people like Wyndham in there, it was used to build the group. When they had Luger and they had Sting, it was used to continue building the group for generations to come. They didn't try to recreate anything. They didn't try to do that. Yeah, hell, even when they had Paul Roma in there, and even Jeff Jarrett, it was to recreate the group. Not recreate, it was to build the group for generations to come, not recreate. I'm trying to say, not recreate it. They're trying to build it for generations to come. That's why anytime people look at the Horsemen, they say, yeah, the original Horsemen started. Flair, Blanchard, and the Andersons, and Dillon, those were the original Horsemen. And when they say, when you look at the history of the Horsemen, and you say to yourself, what group came closest? People will say, well, you put Wyndham into the category. He came closest with the group. The induction of Wyndham was the second best group, if not the best group, in front of the original. Then you kind of look at what was used during the Nitro era of Malenko, Mongo, and Benoit, and people would say that is the third best group, if not the second best group. So your top three groups there would consist of the originals, the Wyndham, the one with Wyndham, if you will. Well, it was Wyndham, Blanchard, and Anderson, and Flair. And you round that out in the top three with the one of Flair, Anderson, Mongo, Benoit, and Malenko. And again, it was all about, and even all the incarnations in between, like I said. The one with Pillman in there. The one with Vicious in there. And like I said, Luger and Sting and even Roma and Jarrett. Roma and Jarrett, they all were there to not recreate, but to build upon and expand for generations to come. That is why when you look at the Horsemen, no one's ever rarely attempted to recreate them. And any attempt of recreation of the Horsemen fails. Like Fortune did. Like the Extreme Horsemen did in MLW. And that is why every group that's being made in TNA that's similar to the nWo in some ways, it fails. That's why the Main Event Mafia failed in some ways, because they were nWo, if not kind of a combination of nWo Horsemen-like. Did not work, because you can't recreate which cannot be recreated. That's why the Immortal group failed. That's why World Elite in some ways failed. That's why S.E.X, even though it was probably one of the better options they had, that's why it failed. That's why Planet Jarrett failed. And that's why Aces and Eights is going to go that direction. Because you're trying to TNA's trying to recreate something that cannot be recreated. But I ask again, why does TNA constantly try to recreate the nWo? Oh. I ask you that question. Let me know what you guys think. Heck, Off the Rope Show, I ask you guys that question. British Fist, I ask you guys that question now. Renegades of Wrestling, JJ Williams, I ask you that question. What do you guys think? Why do you think TNA constantly does this? Let me know what you think down below, everybody. Comments and video responses are greatly appreciated. I'll talk to y'all later.